Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV, and I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. And I'm here to tell you that the best-selling free science fiction and free speculative fiction book on Amazon today is about a group of archaeologists who discover a long-buried ancient horror. And Tim, who's with us today, read that book, and he'll tell you all about it. But before we get to that, we've got 9 other books to get through today. You see, every single Friday, the team here at MetaStellar reads the first few chapters of every book on Amazon's top 10 free list. Today, I was helped out by community members Alex KOROLOV and Tim McHugh. Thanks, Tim, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with book number 10. Oh, and I read this one, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. Yeah, there we go. All right, and what this is I See Me by Meghan, Ciana, Doidge. The first of 3 books in the Oracle Paranormal Romance series. The other books are $5 each. And this series is not in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is where you pay $10 a month and you read all the books you want. It's a really good deal if you read a lot. So this particular series is a spin-off of the Dowser Cozy Magical Mystery series, but the author says you don't need to read that one to enjoy this book. And we reviewed a box set of the first 3 books in the Dowser series this past February. And the link to that is in the article, and the link to the article is in the description box below. And I'll add a link to the previous series in the description box below as well, so it's a little convenient for you guys. So Rochelle is an orphan with a bad attitude. She lives in a group home. She's about to age out and works at a kind of marginal job in a supermarket. So I like her bad attitude. So even though she's a teenager, and I don't usually like young adult coming of age books or teenage drama, I really liked her. She's tough. She's extremely well organized, which I really enjoy. So she's about to age out of the foster care system in Vancouver, and she's on her way to see her social worker. She's on a bus after having dodged a weird stalker when hallucination hits her. So she's been having these hallucinations for a while, but last one was a few months back, and she wound up being sent to a psych ward for 3 days. And so this time she kind of powers through it. She grabs a piece of charcoal that she uses for drawing and hangs on to that, and so she doesn't kind of fall apart on the bus, and then gets off the bus and starts drawing what she saw. And she saw this strange man and a weird woman. When she's done with that, she goes to see her social worker, who tells her that there's actually something left from her mother. So her mother died in a car accident, and Rochelle grew up just in the foster system. They never identified her mother. They never found her father, so she doesn't know anything about her relatives. All she knows is that she's really weird. She keeps people out. None of her adopted parents wanted to keep her, or foster parents wanted to keep her. And so as far as she knew, she had nothing. And this social worker gives her a box that has a necklace in it. So, and she thinks that the necklace might be with a quartz rock on it. And one of the clasps is broken, so she takes it to jeweler to get it fixed. And the jeweler says that it's not a quartz, it's a diamond. And the jeweler creeps her out. She takes the necklace and she leaves. She's been saving up money, and so she goes and she buys an RV because she wants to hit the road. And she's extremely well organized. She has a whole plan for this day that she goes through, and she's already read the owner's manual for the RV and has already been in a test drive for it. It's already lined up the insurance, and I really, really liked her. And so I'm going to be sticking with this book. So it's not usually my kind of thing, but there's enough of a creepy factor with the hallucinations and a weird stalker who pops up and the visions that she's having. And I also like her attitude. I like her relationships with the people in her life, with the tattoo artist who draws a tattoo on her in the opening scene of the book. So I'm thinking I want to stick with it. Okay, next we have here we go. Death's Creation by P.M. Reynolds. The first of 4 books in the Deathbringer Chronicles, an epic fantasy series. The other books are $5 each, and it's not in Kindle Unlimited. So I like epic fantasy, so I thought I was going to be the target reader for this book. But this book was so weird, and I know I read a lot of weird books here. Like, I read a lot of weird books, but this book isn't weird because of its subject matter. It's a straightforward kind of plot. A group of nomadic hunters take down a mammoth. One of the boys is hurt during the fight. He's gonna die, but 2 strangers show up, and they use some magic to heal him. And they're gods. They created the planet. And now they want to change the course of civilization, and so they give magic powers to some of the humans in order to either help the civilization flourish or tear it apart, because there's 2 gods and they have different thoughts about this. So the plot is pretty much straightforward. And then it moves on to Romulus and Remus as they're attacking another city, Sabine, and they interact with a woman who's a priestess of one of these 2 gods, and she uses magic to heal one of them. And then we go to the present day, and Jack, who's a former soldier in the army, his entire team has died. He's bringing the bad news to the sister of one of his fallen teammates, and there's a car accident, and then we switch locations again, and now there's a woman who's attacked by a couple of gang members, and a passing stranger bandages up her wounds. And meanwhile, all this weird stuff is happening, like the artifacts are coming back, and the magical stuff is gearing up to happen again. So straightforward plot, but the writing style, it's like a summary writing style. It's not the book itself. It's kind of like the summary of the book. And I think it was written by ChatGPT. I cannot swear to it. Maybe the writer is that's just his weird writing style, or her weird writing style. But I swear, from the stuff that I've seen, the default output of ChatGPT, before you modify it for your own writing style, this is what it sounds like. So it's all tell, no show. There's a lot of descriptions of how people feel, which is generally considered a bad thing to do when you're writing. You want to show how people feel. So instead of saying this guy was sad, or he said this sadly, you would say he wiped a tear from his eye, or he sighed, or his shoulder slumped. You want to show something. And also you want to be like within the character. You want to say like he felt his hands burned, or his heart fluttered, or he shivered, or something. You want to give some kind of sense of embodiment to immerse the reader in the story. So there's none of that here. It's literally a Wikipedia summary of a story instead of the story itself, which is kind of a big sign that ChatGPT wrote it. So if you want to read a story that sounds like it was written by ChatGPT, again, I don't know if it was, but check this out. So I could not get past this style. The plot has problems too, but I'm not even going to go into them because the readability of the book was just, I couldn't get through it. So I couldn't figure out why this book was on this list. It had 0 reviews, and the other books on this list have hundreds or thousands of reviews, right? So nobody reviewed this book. How did it get to be on this list? I Googled it to try to figure out. And apparently the reason it's on is because it was on the Free Booksy paranormal books list today. That's the only place this book is mentioned, and that's why why I'm assuming people are buying it. But nobody's left, as of this morning when I was reading this, nobody left a review of it. So very interesting. Definitely unreadable. I mean, for me, maybe there's people out there who like this writing style and it's going to be the next big thing. But check it out. I mean, if you're a writer, check it out just to see what it looks like, because it's weird. Yeah, it's just really weird. Anyway, moving on. The Castle of 1,000 Doors by Kenny Gould. The first and so far the only book in the Torath Gall progression fantasy series. A progression fantasy is one where people move up in the levels, like a lit RPG book or Harry Potter, where you're, in a new grade in every book of the series. So it's I do like this genre. So sure, why not? And the premise is that this is a world that's kind of like a modern day world. They've got television, maybe slightly more advanced technologically than we are, but not that much. And they also have magic in this world. But there's a ruling empire, and there's no magic within this empire except for one magic dungeon. And every year, the evil rulers of this empire send prisoners to this dungeon to see if they can escape and win their freedom. And nobody's won their freedom so far. And one of the nobles in this empire has been causing trouble for the ruling class, and the police have photographs of him interacting with some rebels. So he and his son are arrested for treason, and his son is sentenced to serve in the hunt. And his son is an athlete. He plays some weird sport that feels like a cross between soccer and football. And so he's sentenced to this dungeon, and they replace one of his eyes with like a bionic eye, and put him on a bus full of prisoners and send him off to this dungeon. So very readable. So I can see that this is going to turn into a lit RPG kind of book. And I skimmed through the following pages to see if there's going to be stats pages. That's where like the author lists your endurance and your strength and all the numerical data about your character. Page full of numbers, not the most readable thing to hit like every few pages in the middle of a book. I don't particularly like that aspect of lit RPG stories. This one doesn't seem to have pages full of numbers. There does seem to be interactions with the AI or computer or dungeon master or whoever's running this dungeon, but not a list of stats that I could see. So I'm grateful for that. I did enjoy it. It was a pretty exciting beginning. Lots of political maneuvering, and the main character seems like a fun guy to follow. So I might well be sticking with it. Next, we have Hidden by Shalini Boland, the first of 3 books in the Vampires of Marchwood paranormal romance series. The other books are $4 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. So I'm not a fan of vampire romance novels. I want my vampires to be soulless monsters who get staked on sight. So not the target audience. I also hate young adults. Teenage drama, I've been over it for decades. So Madison is a student at a private school in Scotland, and I hate books set in schools. So many strikes against this book. And she's in trouble because she wears goth clothing and she's rude to everybody. She calls the deputy headmistress a Nazi, and the Nazi slaps her, and she threatens to get the headmistress fired. So the headmistress lies and says that Madison was threatening to slap her, and Madison gets suspended for a week. I mean, she's in trouble with everybody. And then she goes home to her foster family, and they're mad at her for being suspended. And she goes to a party with her friends and kind of makes out with a guy, but isn't really into it, and leaves. So I did not think this was a particularly fun character to spend time with. And then she's in a supermarket, and a lawyer shows up looking for her. Meanwhile, back in 1888 Paris, a young guy named Alexander gets in trouble because he's caught kissing a girl at a dance. And back then, it was not the thing to do. So as punishment, he's sent off to be with his parents on an archaeological dig in Turkey. Then we're back with Madison, where we learn that a distant relative has left an estate to her and her brother. It includes a house, an allowance, and millions of dollars. But there's strings attached. For one thing, she's going to have to move to this house, which she doesn't particularly want to do that because she'll have to leave all her friends. So it is a well-written book. It is trying its best to pull me in. But like I said, I hate vampire romance. I don't like Alexander. He seems like a bit of a jerk. Madison's pretty annoying. Way too much teenage drama. So I'm not going to be sticking with it. But if you like teenage drama and vampire romance, the book is extremely readable. There is a legitimate reason why it's on this list. All right, next we have Alone at the End of the World by M.P. McDonald. First of 3 books in the Simpatico Syndrome world, post-apocalyptic series. The other books are $4 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. Alex read this one. And Tim, you're going to tell us about it. What did he think of this book?
Yeah, so like you said, Alex read this one, and he said that you might like this book if you enjoy post-apocalyptic pandemic survival stories. And I feel like I see Alex review a lot of these, so it's probably one of, genre that he's an audience to. A virus called Simpatico Syndrome has wiped out most of the world's population in less than a week. And this story is about the few people who are left surviving in the aftermath. In chapter 1, a man named Noah has just returned from a 2-week fishing trip in the woods of Wisconsin. And as soon as he hits civilization, he realizes that something's wrong. There's no traffic, some cars smashed against a tree, and his cell phone isn't working. So after a family driving a minivan comes across him, they tell him how bad the world's gotten and that almost everyone is dead. In chapter 2, a woman named Cassie has been holed up in her house with her 2 kids. She's been baking food at home for the past 2 days, which is her home business. And she hasn't noticed how bad it's gotten outside. Her deadbeat ex-husband shows up and tries to break into the house. And Cassie manages to get him to leave, but he doesn't get very far and dies on the neighbor's lawn. So Cassie had heard about some virus in the news, but she's just realizing how bad the situation is and how much worse it is than she thought. So Alex said he's definitely would keep reading this book. It seems like it's very fast-paced and will keep you on your toes. Death is lurking around every corner, and he wants to see how the characters navigate this crazy new world that they've found themselves in. So it sounds like a good one from Alex's perspective.
So is this something you would read?
You know what? That's not usually up my alley. But you know what? If it's a good book, I'll read anything in speculative fiction.
I like the cover, but a deadly pandemic is hitting a little bit too close. I like my escapism more escapist. I want it to escape way out.
Yeah, we don't need any more of that. I agree.
All right, next we have Prophecies Ruined by Sam Bowring. Let me make that a little bit bigger so you guys can see the cover. Here you go. The first of 3 books in the Broken Well trilogy, epic fantasy series. The other books are $5 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. And the author has been on this list before. So Tim has read this book as well.
Yeah, so I read the first 3 chapters of this book today, and it's taking place in a high fantasy world that is split between 2 factions who have been warring for 1,000 years. So I do love high fantasy. It's probably my favorite genre, but this one seems like it might be a little bit too fantastical for my tastes. So I usually prefer to have magic infused into a human-driven world, but instead it seems like this is the other way around. But I still say I'm a pretty good audience for it. So we start with a prophecy, as do many great fantasy books. After a millennium of magical war, there is a prophecy that a blue-haired baby boy will be born in the next 100 years, a boy who will have the power to end the war. So obviously both factions, both sides of this war, see the prophecy and they are doing all they can to prepare for the boy. The first couple of chapters follow the birth of the boy. This takes place after the prologue, which gives us the prophecy. So during the boy's birth, his mother, who is an elf, she dies and leaves him alone with his woodsman human father. And the next couple of chapters follow this woodsman in his grief as he tries to come to grips with the reality that he's going to be raising this child alone, and he's grieving his wife and thinking about the child until these warring factions get wind of the birth. So I stopped after chapter 3, but at this point the 2 factions are converging on the woods and they're getting ready to fight for the baby. I know I kind of stopped right before a big action scene, but the heart of the story is that the baby is magically split and into 2 separate babies, and each faction takes one. They don't know which one is the prophecy baby, or if both of them are, or if neither are, they broke the prophecy, but they each decide to raise their child nonetheless. And the story's going to follow both boys as they grow up, loyal to different sides until they're forced to come to grips with their destiny. So when I first read the description for this book, we have a blue-haired prophecy baby. I didn't have that many high expectations, to be honest, but even though I only read a couple of chapters, I honestly think the author can make this work. The writing is mostly good, and it seems like the story has a lot of opportunity for these internal struggles between the 2, not brothers, but 2 halves of the same baby. But still, I wasn't totally hooked by the premise. There's a millennium-long magical war going on, and that seems a little far-fetched to me, and even fantasy needs to have some realism in it. A millennium seems a little too long for a single war. There's been no victor, no fatigue, no tries at peace in generations. That just doesn't seem, very realistic to me. And also the pacing is very slow. The first, I don't know how many pages it was, but the first 3 chapters are just about the boy being born in his wooded hovel. So a little bit too slow for me. So I'm not finishing this book, but if you like deeply fantastical stories and you're not that picky, you'll definitely like this one.
And some people do like a slow pace.
Absolutely.
And the idea of like the prophesied baby being split in 2, that is a really cool premise. There's a TV show set in a modern day written by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. Is it Good Omens? That has a similar premise where 2 kids are both brought up and either one could be the Antichrist or destroy
really?
the
Yeah,
world.
I'm not familiar, but I agree. It's definitely an interesting premise. Like, it's setting up the opportunity for a lot of, struggles with the two boys.
Yeah.
So I would suggest you read it if you're into, deeply fantastical stories.
Yeah,
Sure.
that premise sounds awesome. What happens when they reconnect again in the future? I mean, is one of them good and one of them evil, or are the 2 sides like morally balanced?
Right.
Anyway, so I'm intrigued, but I don't know if I'm intrigued enough to start reading it. Okay, next we go to Throwing Shade by Deborah Wilde. Let's make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Here you go. The first of 7 books in the Magic After Midlife Cozy Magical Mystery series. The other books are $5 to $7 each, but they're not in Kindle Unlimited, so you'd have to pay money for them. Wilde has been on this list before. In fact, this exact book has been on this list before as well. So I do like this kind of book. I do like this author, so I'm feeling good about this book. The protagonist, Miriam, is a librarian for a legal firm. A single mom, really needs the job, even though some of the associates can get a little annoying. She's fun. I like how snarky she is and her banter with her colleagues. Her best friend invites her for drinks after work, and I like their relationship as well. But the best friend flakes on her. So when Miriam meets a handsome lawyer, she flirts with him a little bit, but then she just heads home. But the guy follows her and attacks her. He pulls her into an alley. She fights back, kicks him, sprays him with maximum strength hairspray. You go. And the guy gets angry, makes this spray can fly out of her hand without ever even having to touch it, and starts choking her. She's on the verge of passing out when she opens a door in her mind that's been closed shut most of her life. And once that door is open, she's able to use magic. She fights back and she escapes. So I like the beginning very much. I like Miriam, her friends, her teenage daughter, and I'm looking forward to reading further. Next, we have Alice the Dagger by Ashley McLeo, the first of 2 books in the Wonderland Court series of romantic fantasy. The other book is $6 and is not in Kindle Unlimited. So I don't like romance novels. I don't like retellings of classic fairy tales. In this case, this book is a new take on Alice in Wonderland. I don't like teenage protagonists. But after starting to read this book, it's now at the top of my to-read list because it's just fun. So Alice, the protagonist of the book, is an assassin and half fae. And the book starts out with her climbing up 4 stories, squeezing through a window just barely big enough for a chihuahua. And she's there to kill a shifter mafia leader and with a poisoned dagger. The things go wrong. She's caught. I'm not going to go tell you what happens next because it's pretty exciting and fun. So the world in which she lives is the modern day world. It's LA, and she's been working for a vampire, paying off a debt that she owes him. She's a teenager, and she can't wait till she gets old enough to get out from under the vampire's thumb. And she meets a talking rabbit who tells her that she has to go right away with him because there's mercenaries after her, and she finds out that the vampire was supposed to take care of her and protect her, and instead he's turned her into this assassin, and he wasn't supposed to do that. So the rabbit wants to take her to Wonderland, where her parents are rebel leaders. So I just like Alice. It's an over-the-top kind of book. It's a little ridiculous, but it's also a lot of fun. It's very well paced. It moves pretty quickly, and I'm enjoying the characters and her interactions with them. The writing style is fun, so I'll be sticking with it. Next, we have A Beginning's End by W.J. May, a box set of the first 3 of 8 books in the Beginner's End series of young adult romantic fantasy. The other books are $4 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. It's a prequel to one of May's other series, but I couldn't figure out which one. She has a lot of series up on Amazon. And in fact, we've reviewed a lot of these series. A lot of her books have been on this top 10 list. She's super popular. So this book is set in a medieval style world that has shifters, fae, and vampires in it. And Kira is a village girl who dreams of travel, and she works as a barmaid at a local tavern. She goes to a nearby stream to fill up a pail of water when a wave of fire pours down from the sky and destroys the entire village, and she passes out. When she wakes up, she's got burns on her hands, and everyone she knows is dead. So she has to get somewhere, and she has to get to safety, and she has to tell everyone what happened, that her entire village has been burned to a crisp by a dragon, a 3-headed dragon, in a world where dragons are supposed to be extinct. So she's walking away to the next village. She meets a caravan of wagons. She tells them about the dragon. They don't believe her. They turn around and they leave. And she passes out on a road. A stranger finds her, bandages her up. So she asks him what should she do? Nobody's gonna believe that there was a dragon, and even if they did, what are they gonna do? How do you protect yourself against a 3-headed dragon that could just swoop down and destroy your whole village in a blink of an eye? And so he says that she should go tell the Fae. If anyone can fight a dragon, it's them. So I know I said I don't like young adults or romance or coming of age stories, but I like this story. I like Kira. I like the stranger who's helping her. I like their interactions. I love the writing. It is super immersive. So you get enough of a sense of the world, of the tavern where she's working, her boss, the people in the village, the werewolf shifters who come in after work to drink at the bar. I mean, all of this stuff really brings the world to life and brings her to life as a person. And I really, really enjoying that excellent level of writing. And yeah, I'm going to be sticking with this book. And before we get to the last book, number 1 on today's top 10 list, I want to remind you guys that our anthology is out in both print and electronic form. We're currently putting together the second one. If you're writing short fiction, I'm sorry, our submission cycle closed at the end of March, and our next one isn't going to be until October, but we will be sending out notifications to people if they've been accepted into MetaStellar sometime within a week or so. So if you've submitted a story, keep an eye out. Let's get to the number 1 book on today's list. It's called Ice by Kevin Tinto. It's the first of 3 books in the award-winning Ice trilogy science fiction adventure series. The other books are $5 and $6 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. And Tim read this one. Tim, what do you think of what you've read of the book so far?
Yeah, so this book takes place on Earth, and we're starting in New Mexico. And although we don't know an exact year, it seems to be the relative present. So if not for the fantasy aspects in the prologue, I would have thought this was just a regular fiction book at first. And usually I prefer high fantasy with magic or deep space battles. But the premise here is extremely interesting, and the few fantastical features mixed in, I think, are really good balance. So I'm a good target audience for this one. In the prologue, we start with this ancient tribe. We don't know the exact year, but it's a long time ago. What becomes later New Mexico. So many tribes had, inhabited this area, but there's this fantasy force called the Others, which had forced them all into hiding in the cliff caverns. And we don't know much about the Others besides the fact that they have this sort of power that the tribe is too weak to fight against. The prologue is really short and briefly shows the tribe preparing for a last stand battle against the Others. And we don't see the battle, but we can assume that the tribe is totally wiped out. We then skip forward to modern time when a team of 3 archaeologists and their climbing guide are searching the caverns where the tribe once lived. The next 2 chapters follow the team as they make the groundbreaking discovery of the tribe city deep in the caverns. And they're really pumped to find the city because it's untouched by any looters or scientists, which is really rare. And while exploring, their guide accidentally comes across the scene of the ancient battle we read about in the prologue. So the ground is littered with bones and weapons. And while they're trying to piece together what happened here, they notice these rare red gems that don't look like they belong. I stopped after this chapter, but the team is going to find out that these gems are only found in Antarctica, and they set out to discover how they came to be with this ancient tribe in New Mexico. So I love the premise of this story. There is this ancient mystery in a modern world with a touch of fantasy. It's unique, it's interesting, but the writing is very good. I usually find things to complain about in these reviews, but I think the pacing is perfect. The characters are real, they're unique, and the descriptions that the author gives are simple and elegant. So gotta give him props for that. This is a good book. I'm definitely gonna stick with it. And if you like speculative fiction of any kind, I suggest you pick it up and check it out, because it's a really well written book and a really good premise.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Tim, for joining me here today. Thank you, Alex, wherever you are, for helping us out today. If you want to see the top 10 list every Friday in time for your free weekend reading, subscribe to our newsletter. The link is in the description box below, as are the links to all 10 books, to MetaStellar, to the article with everything, and you know, and to our merchandise, and to the anthology. So check that out, and we'll see you next week. Bye. Bye, Tim. Bye, everybody.
Bye.